The slap echoed down the silent school hallway like a gunshot. For a split second, everything froze. The quiet girl, the one who rarely spoke a word in class, stood there with her cheek burning red, her books scattered across the floor. Everyone expected her to cry, to run away, to swallow the humiliation the way she always did. But that day was different. That day, something inside her snapped. Her name was Emily. She had always been known as the quiet one, the girl who preferred drawing in her sketchbook instead of gossiping in the cafeteria. Teachers often described her as shy, and classmates barely noticed when she passed by. But what nobody knew was the storm she carried within her. Years of silence, years of being overlooked, years of being treated like she was invisible. The bully who had just slapped her was Jason, the leader of the pack. Jason thrived on attention, and his friends laughed at every cruel word he spat out. He didn't hit Emily because she had done anything wrong. He hit her because he knew she wouldn't fight back. At least that's what he thought. The sting on Emily's face burned deeper than skin. It ignited something raw in her chest, a fire she had been holding back for far too long. Her body moved before her mind caught up. When Jason reached for her again, taunting her with that arrogant grin, Emily grabbed his arm with both hands twisted sharply and in one swift motion snapped his elbow backward. The crack was sickening. Jason screamed, collapsing against the lockers, clutching his arm as his friends stumbled back in shock. The hallway that had once been filled with laughter and whispers now went dead silent. Emily's chest rose and fell as she stared at him, not with rage, but with an unsettling calmness that nobody expected from her. "Never touch me again," she whispered, her voice firm, strong, and louder than anyone had ever heard it before. The other students didn't know what to do. Jason, the untouchable, the feared leader, was now writhing on the ground, his pride shattered along with his elbow. And Emily, the girl they thought was powerless, had shown strength none of them could comprehend. But the moment wasn't without consequences. A teacher's footsteps were already echoing from around the corner. Emily knew she would be blamed, that nobody would believe her side of the story because Jason was popular and she was the quiet one. Fear crept into her chest, but this time she stood tall. For once, she didn't care about being misunderstood. For once, she wasn't going to hide. When the teacher arrived, Jason's friends immediately started shouting.
"She broke his arm!"
"She's crazy!" they cried, pointing at Emily like she was some kind of monster. But Emily didn't flinch. She looked straight into the teacher's eyes, her voice steady. "He hit me first. He's been hitting others too. Someone had to stop him." The teacher hesitated, clearly caught between believing the golden boy of the school or the silent girl who had just done the unthinkable. But then, something unexpected happened. A younger student, a freshman who had been bullied by Jason countless times, stepped forward. His voice shook, but his words were clear. "She's telling the truth. I saw everything. Jason has been hurting people for months." More voices followed. One by one, students who had been too afraid to speak finally found the courage. They admitted how Jason had humiliated them, shoved them, made their lives miserable. It was as if Emily's act of defiance had broken the chains of silence for everyone. Jason was taken to the nurse's office, and soon after, the principal's decision was clear. Jason was suspended indefinitely, and an investigation into his bullying was launched. For the first time, he faced real consequences. Emily, however, was taken aside. The teachers were stern but not cruel. They couldn't ignore what she had done, but they couldn't deny why she had done it either. In the end, she was given counseling instead of punishment. But what mattered most to her wasn't what the school decided. It was how she felt inside. That night, Emily looked at herself in the mirror. For years, she had believed being quiet meant being weak, that her silence was proof she was powerless. But in that hallway, she discovered a truth she had buried deep within her. Strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it lies quietly, waiting for the right moment to rise. The next day at school, students looked at her differently. Not with pity, not with ridicule, but with respect. Some even whispered thank you as she walked by, grateful that she had stood up to the bully they could never confront. Emily didn't become loud or seek the spotlight, but she carried herself differently now, shoulders back, head held high. She still drew in her sketchbook, still preferred quiet over chaos, but now, people understood something about her they never had before. Silence is not weakness. Quiet people often carry the loudest strength, the kind that can shatter cruelty in an instant. In the end, Emily's story wasn't about violence. It wasn't about snapping Jason's elbow or humiliating him in front of everyone. It was about courage, the kind that grows in the shadows, unnoticed, until the moment it's needed most. Her act became a symbol for others in the school, a reminder that bullies only win when good people stay silent. Emily hadn't just defended herself, she had inspired others to rise, to speak, to no longer be afraid. And from that day on, the quiet girl was quiet no longer. She was unshakable, she was strong, she was free. The slap rang out across the hallway, sharp and brutal, as if it cut through the air itself. Emily's cheek burned red, her books spilling across the floor like broken pieces of her dignity. Laughter followed, cruel and unrestrained, bouncing off the lockers. Jason stood over her, smirking with the arrogance only a bully could wear. "What's the matter, Mouse? Can't even look me in the eye." His friends roared with laughter, their voices mixing with the whispers of onlookers who were too scared to intervene. Emily's hands trembled as she gathered her books. She wanted to disappear, like she always did. She wanted to swallow her tears, lower her head, and pretend the humiliation didn't matter. That was the role she had always played, the quiet girl, invisible, unimportant, safe in silence. But something shifted in her chest. The sting of Jason's hand wasn't just pain. It was the weight of every insult, every shove, every moment she had let herself be small. It was years of loneliness, years of pretending she was fine when she wasn't. And for the first time in her life, she stood up. Emily rose slowly, clutching her last book to her chest, and looked Jason straight in the eye. Her silence wasn't timid anymore, it was dangerous. Jason stepped closer, amused. "What's this?" Little Mouse finally got a backbone. He reached for her arm, his smirk daring her to resist. Emily's body moved before she could think. She grabbed his wrist, twisted with a sudden burst of strength, and in one brutal motion snapped his elbow backward. The sound was awful, a sickening crack that made even the loudest voices fall silent. Jason's scream echoed down the hallway as he collapsed, clutching his arm in agony. His friends stumbled back, their faces pale with shock. The quiet girl had broken the king of the hallway. Emily's voice was steady, sharp as glass. "Never touch me again." Nobody laughed now. Nobody even breathed. The girl they ignored had done the unthinkable, and the balance of power shattered in an instant. But then came the footsteps, heavy, hurried, echoing closer. The teacher. Emily knew what it meant. Jason would twist the story, his friends would back him up, and she would be painted as the aggressor. She braced herself for the blame, but for once she didn't feel afraid. She felt free. The teacher turned the corner, eyes widening at the sight. Jason on the floor, Emily standing tall, students frozen in disbelief.
"She attacked me!"
Jason screamed through his pain, tears in his eyes. "She's insane! She broke my arm for no reason." His friends shouted in agreement, pointing at Emily, calling her dangerous. Emily didn't argue. She didn't beg. She simply said the truth. "He hit me. In front of everyone. He's been hitting others, too." The hallway was silent. Then a voice spoke up. "She's right." It was a freshman, trembling but brave. "He pushed me into the lockers last week. He's been doing it all year." Another student stepped forward, then another and another. One by one, the silence shattered. Stories poured out, shoves, insults, humiliation, fear, all of it traced back to Jason. His reign of terror was finally exposed. The teacher looked from Jason to Emily, then to the sea of faces now speaking their truth. The decision became clear. Jason was escorted to the nurse's office, and then to the principal. His suspension was immediate, and for the first time, he faced consequences he couldn't laugh off. Emily, however, was taken aside. The staff questioned her, concerned, but they saw the truth in her eyes. She wasn't violent by nature. She wasn't reckless. She was a girl pushed too far, finally fighting back. At home that night, Emily stared at herself in the mirror. Her cheek was still red, but her eyes burned with something new, strength. She realized she hadn't just broken Jason's arm. She had broken years of silence. She had broken free. The next day at school, people looked at her differently. Not as the quiet girl, not as the mouse, but as someone powerful, someone unshakable. Some students whispered thanks, others gave her small nods of respect. She didn't crave attention, but she couldn't deny how it felt, like she had finally been seen. Emily didn't change overnight. She was still quiet. She still loved her sketchbook more than gossip. But she carried herself differently now, shoulders back, head high. She no longer shrank away. She no longer let silence mean weakness. Her story became a reminder whispered among students. Bullies thrive on fear, but courage, no matter how small, can break them. And though Jason's arm healed, his power never returned. Because Emily had shown everyone the truth. Quiet doesn't mean weak. Sometimes it means waiting until the right moment to rise.